G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And the late 1990s was considered by many to be the golden era of Japanese cars. You had things like the Honda NSX, the Supra, the GTR, the Mitsubishi GTO and the RX-7. But there was one more car from a Japanese manufacturer that was considered to be their flagship sports car. It's this, the Subaru SVX. Designed by Ital Design in the late 80s with its unique window design inspired by fighter aircraft, the SVX Alcyone was Subaru's attempt to make a luxury sports GT. Its name, Alcyone, is the brightest star in Subaru's logo, which is quite fitting. Compared with other cars from this era, it stands out enormously like a fighter jet, with its cockpit-style interior and bubble canopy, wheels that look like they're always spinning, and weird squashed exhaust tips. It's just striking enough where it turns as many heads as an NSX worth 10 times the price, but without being so weird it becomes sail-proof. However, while a very pretty car and I'm sure a very lovely car to drive, there was one major problem with the SVX. While every single other top JDM sports car was available with a 5 or 6-speed manual transmission, the SVX's 3.3 litre flat 6 was paired, oh dear, with a 4-speed automatic. However, this one is a rather special SVX because the Achilles heel of this car has been solved with a 5-speed manual WRX transmission. The engine is a 3.3 litre flat 6. At the time when this came out in 1991, it was the largest engine that Subaru had ever produced, up until the 3.6 came along in the legacy from 2015. It's essentially a 6-cylinder version of the 4-cylinder 2.2 litre boxer 4 that they had in the Impreza at the time, but it now has double overhead camshafts and a much higher compression ratio of 10.1 to 1. It makes 173 kilowatt or 231 horsepower and 306 newton meters of torque. For the early 90s when this engine came out, that was a fairly commendable amount of power, frankly. As I mentioned, the only transmission option available from new was a 4-speed automatic transmission. But the previous owner, after owning this car for 11 whole years and racking up 350,000 kilometers, decided that the 4-speed auto had to go, and so swapped in a 5-speed WRX transmission. And it pairs up beautifully with the SVX's symmetrical all-wheel drive system and 3.3 litre flat 6. Save for the 3D printed surround for the shifter on the interior, you really would have no idea that these never came with a manual transmission from factory. Something that I must say Subaru has always done pretty well, at least in their cars from the 90s and 2000s, perhaps not so much in the 2010s, is the interior. You can tell that Subaru was really trying to go after the European offerings, because to think this came out in 1991 and yet it still looks this interesting, but also this well built and well spec'd. The steering wheel feels lovely with nice, smooth, tightly stitched leather. The gauge cluster has a lovely appearance to it. The very 90s wraparound dash with all the buttons here behind the steering wheel looks fantastic. And it's got an impressive amount of features. Headlight washers, adjustable intermittent wipers, fully automatic air conditioning, a digital clock display up here, fully electric windows, electric mirrors, cruise control, and a very cool panel here in the dashboard to hide what could even be spec'd as a double din radio. Suede material all down the dashboard, the glove box, and onto the door cards with extremely comfortable leather seats. And so now all that's left to do is see how the mighty manual SVX drives. Driving the Subaru SVX. You can tell when this originally had a 4-speed automatic transmission, to be honest, it would have actually been a pretty nice car to drive, simply because it's very quiet, very well built, lovely seats, and a lovely smooth flat 6 engine. But now that it's got a WRX gearbox where the ratios aren't particularly long, now this thing is a riot to drive. To 7,200 RPM from 3.3 litre flat 6 with incredibly light internals. As a result, this thing just flings through the RPM with 4-wheel drive to perfectly put down the power after every gear change. While certainly not blisteringly fast, and it doesn't pull right to redline like the newer 3-litre flat 6 does in the Legacy, it's definitely an exciting drive. Steering feel is not bad, it's a little bit light in typical Subaru fashion, but everything else is a joy. The suspension is just firm enough where it feels like a sports GT, but without being so wallowy through these corners that it's just a bit sort of ungainly. The engine is a masterpiece, sounds absolutely fantastic. Going up this hill, has a nice amount of torque and a very smooth power band and that really gritty tone, and you can just hold it in second gear up a road like this. Use the 4-wheel drive to haul you out of every single corner, and man, this thing is fantastic to drive. Great noise, decent amount of power, good strong brakes, immediate throttle response, and brilliant grip out of corners. You can go foot hard down out of here, and the 4-wheel drive just miraculously pulls you through. And I love that sound, man. Down to first, out of the corner. Just listen to that. To be honest, this thing is by no means a sports car. Soft suspension, it's quite big, it's quite heavy. It's a GT car, right? It's designed for motorway driving, but thanks to a brilliant engine that responds immediately to your inputs, makes downshifting a joy. Perfect balance of being smooth and comfortable and easy to drive, but with a really raw, engaging engine. While not necessarily a technological masterpiece, 4-wheel drive system is pretty simple, all things considered. The engine doesn't have any turbocharging to speak of, and is not blisteringly powerful like the NSX's one. But the whole package comes together to produce a car that is brilliant to drive and extremely engaging. I suppose the mark of how good a car is really, to a car enthusiast like myself, is how much of a smile does it put in your face. And this thing absolutely does. Manual gearbox, flat 6, with no turbos to get in the way of the drive, with a lovely interior, smooth ride, 7,200 RPM redline, and a smiling bit of meat here in the middle changing gears. This thing is fantastic. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Kiwi Car Life. I hope you enjoyed this look at what can only be one of half a dozen manual SVXs in certainly New Zealand, if not the world. It's a special car and a brilliant drive. Thanks for watching, and I will look forward to seeing you again next time.